Morning. Thank you for being here today on this rainy day. My name is Bethany Klug, and I practice with the Heartland community of mindful living. We've been practicing together in the Plum Village tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh since 1997, so we are celebrating 21 plus years together. We actually meet here at Unity Temple and have on Monday evenings since then. That's we started here and we're still here. And if you'd like to check us out, we're in Myrtle Fillmore Chapel on Monday evenings at 7. We start at 7:15. We like it if you arrive at 7, and so we can set up and settle in. And we're done at 9. The Plum Village, a tradition of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, is characterized by, I have arrived, I am home. And that we are constantly arriving to our true home, the present moment. And so we can arrive eating, we can arrive sitting, we can arrive speaking, all of our daily activities. So it really becomes a moment-to-moment practice. And the practice itself is grounded in the 5 mindfulness trainings. If some of you are familiar with Buddhism, you might be familiar with precepts. And Thich Nhat Hanh is known for having his way to keep the practice fresh, relevant, and modern. And so the 5 mindfulness trainings are a 21st century version of the 5 precepts for lay people. And there he is. He had a stroke in 2014. You might notice, I can't remember what side it is, but there's a little drop in his lip. And I think sometime this year, he got to go back to Vietnam for good. And Thich Nhat Hanh is at his home temple in Hue, Vietnam, surrounded by his continuation, all smiling around him. And what I'm going to share with you today, I first heard from Thich Nhat Hanh, but the aha moment came when I heard it again just this past April. And so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead, Karen, and go to the next slide. I titled this presentation of this talk, An Aha Moment on the Eightfold Path. And the path, or the Eightfold Path, is the 4th Noble Truth. Now, the 4 Noble Truths are the very first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment. He got up, he looked around and says, I got to teach somebody this. And according to Thich Nhat Hanh, I'll call him Tai throughout the presentation because that's what we call him. It means beloved teacher. It's the cream of his teaching, and it is the method of practice. So the first noble truth is ill-being. Sometimes it's called suffering or discomfort, but it's learning to recognize ill-being and conversely well-being. The second is that there are roots to ill-being. And so once we recognize ill-being, we have to look for its origins. And the same for well-being. The third noble truth is there's an end to ill-being. We can transform this. Transformation and healing is possible. And we can cultivate well-being. And finally, the 4th noble truth, there is a way to end ill-being, and there is a path to well-being. And there are 8 elements of this path called the Eightfold Path. Now, here's my, I guess I'd say it's kind of my confession. You know, I got into this practice, and I've been doing this since the early 90s sometime. And honestly, I never really had a handle on the Eightfold Path. It was always presented to me as a list. I do not do well with lists. It just kind of, I'd look at it, bounce right off my head. But I've always taken the approach called the Dharma sponge approach, and I really recommend the Dharma sponge approach. It's like the rain comes down, And if the sponge is dry, that drop just plops right off, but some of the drops begin to sink in. And so I just let it go, but I was reassured that if I practice the 5 mindfulness trainings, the Eightfold Path is in there. I'm like, okay, I have it covered, even though when I look at that list, my eyes cross, okay? And so, like I said, Ty taught this for the first time as a cycle, what you're seeing up there on the board. And now some of you guys don't get into flow charts. Just bear with me. I do. Ty taught it as part of the cycle in 2014. And I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I can begin to grasp this, but I still can't say I really got it at that time. And we start at the top of this cycle, at the very top where it says view. View is the insight of interbeing, which the 5 mindfulness trainings help us cultivate. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Thich Nhat Hanh or the Plum Village tradition, the word interbeing may be new to you. It's his way of putting into one word that nothing exists by itself alone, that we are dependent on everything else in the world. And when you realize that deeply, then you're free from birth and death. It is a magnificent realization that, frankly, I'll tell you, I only get part-time, but I get it sometimes. Some people say view is understanding, but it's definitely the foundation of our actions. And then, I'm going to pull this out because I want to turn around and look at the diagram. Yes, okay. And view shapes our actions, our action of thought and intention, speech and communication, as well as our bodily actions. And these are ways that we interface with the world and with each other. And then all of that shapes our livelihood and our lifestyle. Now, some of you may have heard about right livelihood. It was traditionally taught that right livelihood meant doing something else besides dealing in weapons, slavery, selling meat or creating meat, dealing with intoxicants and poisons. But Thich Nhat Hanh says you can earn your living without transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. And we should be awake to the consequences far and near of earning a living. And then one of our teachers in our Sangha, Michael Saborsky, he says it's the way we interact with the collective. It's the shape of our life. And I kind of look at it this way. Back in the Buddha's time, most people just tried to live, tried to survive, subsistence. And it was hard for them to get into too much trouble. But today, hello, we've got all sorts of ways, without ever getting into weapons dealing, that we can cause a lot of harm to ourselves, to others, and to the planet. Livelihood then shapes our effort and our determination. I wish I'd given Victor another slide. I've presented I presented this at least twice here before. There are 4 elements to right effort. And you could say it's the energy we put into our practice. But it's more specific than that. It's when we notice something unwholesome arising in ourselves, then we act to calm that unwholesome feeling or thought. And then we also then try to create causes and conditions in our lives, live in a way that this unwholesomeness doesn't arise, or doesn't arise very far. Maybe we recognize it before we act on it. And then opposite, if something wholesome arises, we want to help it flourish. And then finally, again, we want to create causes and conditions in our lives so that the wholesome seeds that are in us can be nourished and flower and bloom and blossom. And then finally, the effort that we put into this cultivating positive seeds and calming negative seeds fuels our mindfulness and our concentration. And mindfulness is a huge part of the Plum Village tradition. That's that moment-to-moment awareness I was telling you about a moment ago. And it requires concentration to have a strong mindfulness, to make every step a journey to the present moment. So let's go to the next slide, and part of the aha. So this was Michael's twist, Brother Michael Saborski's twist. He says when we go to view, shaping thought, intention, speech, thought, speech, and action, to lifestyle, he says that's our outer life. And then if we go to the next slide, from our effort and determination to mindfulness, concentration, and back to view, that's our inner life. And so we just keep basically through our outer life, and then with our effort, mindfulness, and concentration, basically reflecting and contemplating that outer life, taking that inside, transforming, getting to the root cause of maybe unwholesomeness, transforming that, and it reshapes our view. And the same thing. We have something unwholesome or unskillful, we take it into our practice and apply our mindfulness and our concentration to it. And then again, it reshapes our view, and our view just becomes more loving and more compassionate and more understanding. And so finally, the last slide, thank you. This was my aha moment. What happens when we don't have an inner life? What happens if our practice isn't very strong? We're not constantly reshaping that view. We're not moving towards love and compassion and insight. We're stuck, maybe? And maybe we're stuck in ideology. Maybe we're stuck in beliefs that are quite harmful. And so this was my big aha moment, and of how we really need to rededicate ourselves over and over again to our inner life. I suppose it's possible to have too much inner life, but most of us don't have that issue. Most of us, the issue is, like I said, setting up those causes and conditions in our life that allow us to take mindful steps and mindful breath and time on the cushion so that we can reflect. So do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, society and the world. Practice. That's what this says. Practice. So thank you for listening, and I'll be available right here if you have any comments or questions. This is the first time I've shared this, so I'd certainly love to hear what you think. Thank you.
So let's take a moment to breathe.
I invite you to maintain awareness on your breathing. And in this meditation, I'll give you some guidance, and then you'll hear two phrases, key words, and then a sound of the bell. And just during that time of silence, you're invited to contemplate those key words. And then, as typical of the Plum Village tradition, you'll hear what we call a stop sound of the bell to let you know that I'm about to speak again. So please enjoy. Aware of myself picking up an autumn leaf, I breathe in. Touching the wonderful, interdependent nature of that leaf, I breathe out. Picking up leaf, interdependent nature. Picking up leaf, interdependent nature. Aware of myself, alive, here and now. I breathe in, touching the wonderful, interdependent nature of life in me and around me. I breathe out, picking up leaf, alive here now, interdependent life in and around me. Alive here now, interdependent life in and around me. Aware of the leaf returning to the earth and arising as a new leaf. I breathe in. Seeing the leaf in 10,000 different forms of birth and death, I breathe out. Leaf to earth, earth to leaf, 10,000 different forms. Leaf to earth, earth to leaf, 10,000 different forms. Aware of myself as part of the wonderful interdependent existence, I breathe in. Seeing that I become manifest under many different forms, I breathe out. Part of wonderful interdependent existence, many forms. Part of wonderful interdependent existence, many different forms. Seeing that the leaf is not really born, does not really die, but only appears to be born and die, I breathe in. Seeing that I do not really pass through birth and death, but only appear to, I breathe out. Leaf only appears to be born and to die. I only appear to be born and to die. Leaf only appears to be born and to die. I only appeared to be born and to die. Seeing that the leaf has a Buddha nature and functions everywhere, I breathe in. Seeing that I have Buddha nature and function everywhere, I breathe out. Leaf functions everywhere. I function everywhere. Leaf functions everywhere. I function everywhere. Seeing that the leaf has accomplished its work from beginningless time, I breathe in. Seeing that I have accomplished my work from beginningless time, I breathe out. Leaf's work beginningless, my work beginningless. Leaf's work beginningless, my work beginningless. Seeing that the leaf is already what it wants to become, I breathe in. Seeing that I am already what I want to become, I breathe out. Leaf already is. I already am. Leaf already is. I already am. Seeing that the leaf can call up all its Buddha nature from beginningless time, I breathe in. Seeing that I can call up all my Buddha nature from beginningless time, I breathe out. Leaf's beginningless transformation, my beginningless transformation. Leaf's beginningless transformation, my beginningless transformation. Good morning, everyone. It's a blessing to see you all here today. That meditation comes from the book by Thich Nhat Hanh, The Blooming of a Lotus, Guided Meditations for Achieving the Miracle of Mindfulness. And there he is, Thich Nhat Hanh. July 8th of this year in Hue, Vietnam. You might note that his face droops a little bit. He had a stroke in 2014, but he's still teaching us. And this year he was allowed to go back to his root temple in Hue. And you'll see him surrounded by the many smiling faces of his continuation. So I titled this talk, An Aha Moment on the Eightfold Path. If we can go to the next slide, please. And the path, or the Eightfold Path, is the fourth noble truth. The Four Noble Truths was the first teaching of the Buddha after his enlightenment. And Thich Nhat Hanh says, the Four Noble Truths are the cream of the Buddha's teaching and a method of practice. The first noble truth is ill-being. You may have also heard it called suffering, pain, or uneasiness. But he likes ill-being, and so do I, because then you can say it's also well-being. But you must recognize both ill-being and well-being. The second noble truth is the root of ill-being, as well as the causes of well-being. And so when you notice ill-being or well-being, you look deeply for its causes so that you can root out the causes of ill-being and nourish well-being. The third noble truth is there is an end to ill-being. You can transform this. It's about transformation and healing. And on the flip side, we can encourage well-being. And then finally, the fourth noble truth. There is a way to do this. There is a path to well-being. There is a path to the end of ill-being. And it has 8 elements called the Noble Eightfold Path. Now I have a confession to make. I've been practicing in the Plum Village tradition since the early 90s, but I haven't really gotten the Eightfold Path. It's always been presented as a list, and I don't do well with lists. They kind of make my eyes cross. So I always take the approach called the Dharma sponge. And so the Dharma falls like rain on the sponge. And if the sponge is moist enough to receive it, then it drops right in. But if it's dry, it bounces right off. And that's really the way seeing the Eightfold Path as a whole, as a wholeness, has been for me. But the good news is that in the Plum Village tradition, which I should stop and define that, the Plum Village tradition of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh is defined by, I have arrived, I am home. And we are constantly arriving into our home, our true home, the present moment. Whether it's our gentle steps on the earth, washing dishes, speaking, brushing our teeth, our daily activities are all an opportunity to come home to the present moment and an opportunity for enlightenment. This is how we practice mindfulness in the Plum Village tradition. It's not just on the cushion, but the cushion, we need it. Please don't think we don't need the cushion. And our mindfulness practice is grounded by the ethic of the 5 mindfulness trainings. Some of you, if you're familiar with Buddhism, may be aware of the precepts that the Buddha taught to lay people. Well, Thich Nhat Hanh has always been refreshing our practice and keeping it relevant to our daily life right here in the 21st century. So the 5 mindfulness trainings are this fresh, relevant version of the ancient 5 precepts. And that ethic grounds our practice of mindfulness. So back to the good news. The Eightfold Path is in the 5 mindfulness trainings. So I was covered. So I was just waiting for that moment when my Dharma sponge was ready to receive the Eightfold Path. So the first time I heard Thai teach the Eightfold Path as this process, as this cycle, was in 2014. And so the cycle begins with view at the very top there. Right view drives this entire process of practicing with the Eightfold Path. Right view, which doesn't mean wrong view, means appropriate view, wholesome view, upright view. Right view is the insight of interbeing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Plum Village tradition, you're like, what is interbeing? Interbeing is the way we put in one word, dependent co-arising, the fact that nothing sits by itself alone. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. We are all inextricably connected. And when you have this deep insight, it frees us from birth and death. A simple example Thich Nhat Hanh gives of interbeing is, did anybody drink coffee or tea this morning? Yeah. Did anyone see the cloud in their cup of coffee? If you can see that, then you see interbeing. So drink your cloud. Right view is what we work for, cultivating that insight of compassion, love, and understanding. It is the foundation of our actions, which are thoughts, words, and action here. Right thought, which is our intention. Right speech, how we communicate in a skillful ways, part of skillful means, and our bodily actions as well. And this leads to shaping our lifestyle, our livelihood. And I want to say a few words about lifestyle and livelihood. In the original Buddhist teachings, right livelihood, what you did for a living, was right if you weren't dealing in weapons, slavery, meat, intoxicants, and poisons. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, what he says about, one of the things he says about right livelihood, he says, it's a way of earning your living without transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. We should be awake to the consequences far and near of earning a living. And then another teacher in our tradition, Michael Saborsky, we've had him come teach here many times. He says, it's more than just how we earn our living. It's the way we interact collectively with the collective, with all of us. It's the shape of our life. And my comment on this is that at the time of the Buddha, most of the people, they engaged in subsistence living. They were just trying to survive. It was pretty hard to get into too much trouble. But today, we can get in a whole lot of trouble without dealing in weapons. Yeah. So that, to me, that was a fresh way of thinking of it. And then our livelihood goes on to shape our effort, our determination, the energy we put into our practice. And there are 4 elements that lead to right effort and diligence in our practice. The first is when something unwholesome, an unwholesome mental formation arises in us. A lot of people came to me afterward and said, yeah, I have all this negativity I'm having to deal with from outside and inside. We act to calm and release it. And then the second step is to live, to think, to structure our lives in a way that these unwholesome mental formations, we can calm them down, or they don't arise as strongly. We recognize them, and then we can calm them. Third, if wholesome mental formations arise, my favorite, then we want to nourish them. We want to encourage them. But then the fourth one is, then we want to also live in a way that we create the causes and conditions for these wholesome thoughts and feelings and perceptions to flourish. That effort and that determination then fuels our mindfulness. And concentration is required for our mindfulness. And then the insight that we gain from mindfulness and concentration goes on to reshape our view again. So we have this entire circle going on that is constantly modifying our view and our ability to relate to ourselves and the world with love, understanding, and compassion. And so if we go to the next slide, we're getting to my aha moments now. Actually, this was Michael. He showed that the first half of this diagram, from view through onto lifestyle and livelihood, that's our outer life. It's the way we connect to and interact with the world. And then if we go to the next slide, the other part of the diagram, from effort to mindfulness, concentration to view, that's our inner life. And of course, we need both of those. And then finally, let's go to the last slide. This was my aha moment. What if we don't have an inner life? Or our practice, our diligence, and our effort aren't strong enough to keep strengthening and reshaping our view in the direction of love and compassion. We get stuck. We have wrong view, which is an unskillful view, which leads to unskillfulness throughout this whole process. So do yourself, your family, your society, our society, and our world a favor. Practice. Re-examine your practice and say, am I doing enough? Could I do more? And I'll be available after the service. If you have any comments or questions about this, it's the first time 9 o'clock was the first time I presented this. And I'm very interested in what you think of this way of working with the Eightfold Path. It was quite enlightening to me. Thank you, friends.